You're listening to The Blind Chick, an Aftersight original podcast. We're telling you stories about strength, overcoming hurdles, and living experiences. We see who you really are. Blindness can be an adventure. Are you ready for the journey of a lifetime? We are. What's good, everybody? Jonathan Price here, your podcast producer for The Blind Chick and Aftersight podcast. We want to thank you so much for making this show and all of our shows really a staple and a cornerstone of the blind and low vision community. We're going to dive back into part 2 with Zach Tidwell because this is just way too cool. And he has so many wonderful things to say. So I'm going to shut up. Zach, take it over.
I guess I woke up while he was on the phone with 911.
Wow,
and
are you serious?
Water. Yeah, I don't remember any of this, but was asking for help and for water, and I actually was combative with the EMTs and the paramedics, so they had to sedate me, and then they ended up putting me on life support when I got to the hospital. So I don't know how long I was out, but when they brought me to, I was so messed up from the brain injury and then probably all of the meds that I was on. That even though I was totally blind already, I did not understand that I was totally blind, nor could they get the point across that I was.
So
totally
did
blind,
it destroy the optic nerves? Is that what I'm guessing?
Yeah. So on my right side, I shot myself right between the eyes because that's where we were trained to shoot for headshots, and because there's a specific part of your brain going back from there called your medulla oblongata that basically regulates all of your autonomous functions. So you're breathing, and it's like your off button. But the bridge of my nose and lower part of my forehead and my right eye socket and my sinuses were all pretty much blown out. So my right optic nerve got severed. All that bone was gone. And then my left optic nerve was still intact, but it wound up dying from all the swelling in my head.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So they thought that I was going to get sight back in my left eye because that nerve was intact. And they were telling us that I was going to get it back once I had my facial reconstruction. But I was hallucinating so bad early on because I wouldn't see the people I was talking to, but I could talk like we're talking right now. And I was seeing these just wild backdrops and it was strange. I was so out of it. So that time is kind of blurry early on, but
yeah, that
at one point,
that is amazing that you could be talking to somebody, you're conscious, you're looking at them, you can't see them, and you just the brain just wouldn't go.
Filling in the blanks.
You couldn't put it together.
But even that was a miracle for us. They didn't know if I was going to live. Once they knew I was going to live and was still on life support, they didn't know if I would be me. And I guess when they were finally waking me up, my dad, or I guess my parents were in the room, my dad had said something to me and I flipped off, and they were like, that's when they realized like he's still in there. So yeah.
All right.
That's just, we have that sense of humor, but so we wound up, it was 51 total days in the hospital. But again, they were telling me that I was going to get sight back in my left eye. And one day while I was in the ICU, because they would do their rounds every day, the doctors would come in and be like, what's your name? What's your birthday?
And how was that? Like, I mean, it had to have been, and also just the previous year, you had a traumatic brain injury. And then there's this one. It's like, it must have affected other things besides your vision, I would think.
I had to relearn how to do everything.
Oh, Zach.
So, it was so out of it. And then now all my stuff is out there for everyone, right? My parents have gone through my phone and watched this video. Well, my mom went through my phone. My dad has still never seen that or watched it or anything. And now all this stuff's out there, and it was a lot. And I couldn't even turn over in bed without getting sick. And I was tied up to so many machines and stuff. And I just I had to learn how to sit up in bed and then how to stand next to bed. And then my body couldn't handle that. And I'd have to get back in bed, and I had to learn how to brush my teeth and feed myself. And it literally, I couldn't remember how to pee when they took the catheter out. It was ridiculous. So they would put the catheter back in, and then we would try again later. It was very exciting stuff. Yeah.
So, no guy likes that story.
But one day, one of the ICU docs was coming around and she just dropped it on me with zero warning or any hint of bedside manner or like human compassion that I was going to be totally blind. And I was also, I'm deaf in one ear at this point. So totally blind.
On your right side?
Yeah. That whole side just got jacked. Yeah. But she just dropped it on us. And like later that day when my parents were at the hospital and we were talking, my mom was like, well, you could get a guide dog. And my dad was like, oh, you could be a therapist and use this to help someone else. And I was like, I'm not making effing salt and pepper shakers. And they were like, what are you talking about? And so I had never met a blind person before. And so my mind went back to the salt and pepper shakers in the chow hall on my part of base on Camp Pendleton, in little tiny print said made proudly by the blind and visually impaired.
Really?
So for whatever reason in that moment, my mind was like, that's what blind people have to do for a living. I was like, I'm not doing that.
Oh no.
But I had done big things, wanted to go on to do more big things. I wanted to do something with a purpose, and I wanted my independence back. So I chased that, and I wound up having my facial reconstruction surgery. Went home at 51 days after I shot myself, was home for a month, went to blind rehab for 2.5 months. And then in December of that year, it wound up being like 8.5 months after I shot myself, I was snowboarding again.
Wow.
And that was before I could cook for myself or do anything. I was snowboarding.
Did you go through rehab through the VA or?
Yeah.
You did. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know they have an incredible program in Denver.
Yeah.
So
they don't have a blind rehab program here, but what they do have. And I got very fortunate with this, because I was initially taken into a private facility, and once I was stable, they transferred me to the VA.
Okay.
There's a lot more drama in between the two things, but got transferred to the VA, and during my intake there, this is one of the VAs that has the outpatient blind rehab services. Right. And so they heard there was a young kid coming on who's now totally blind, and one of the head of the program came in during my intake and had it, in addition to, just discussing all of the help that I was going to get, told me about adaptive sports. And I was like, I'm doing that. And that led to snowboarding that December.
Nice.
That a month after that snowboarding trip, I was back in college.
Wow.
And so that's, 9.5, 10 months after I shot myself. 6 months after that, I was back out on my own, living in downtown Denver on the college campus. Yeah. And I just forced myself. I wanted my independence. I was going to be fully independent. So that was my test run, to be back out on my own and still have people around.
Right.
And that made me get really good at my cane, because I didn't want to be cooped up in the dorms. So I learned how to walk all the way across campus to go to the gym so I could get jacked again. I kept pushing myself. And so I got into rock climbing and hiking and started doing some kayaking stuff. And then 6 months after that, I bought my first house. And that is when things finally hit me. Like, I had not cried about losing my sight that entire time. But that winter, so the end of December of 2020 is when I bought my first house. This was still up in Denver. I'm still in college. And I had switched majors to clinical psychology. Again, trying, like my dad said.
I was going to say, didn't your dad say something about
that? I wanted to use this to help someone. Yeah. And I tried to find proof of a blind nurse somewhere. And it's just, it's a liability thing. It's not, I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do, but I wasn't just going to sit idle. Yeah. So I just made myself get back into college. And, along that path, like, I had started a blog. I was just to make myself learn how to use JAWS so I could use the internet. And I was every day I was practicing cooking. I was practicing everything. And I kept pushing. So December of 2020 is when I bought that house. And leading into winter break. I don't know anyone in Denver. I'm fully back out on my own, and it's COVID lockdowns too. So like I had that led into what I believe is probably the worst depression that I've ever been through. And I say that because I was sober through all of it. And so I actually had to deal with it, but it was also a huge turning point in life for me. So that those first several months of 2021, I reached the point that I did not want to be here. And it didn't make sense because all I had wanted was my independence. And by all metrics, like I was killing it, right? I had just, for all the reasons that I just said, I was doing really, really well and adjusting really well, but it was like things finally registered how long it took me to do everything and just how little I could really do. Like I could survive, but that's all I was doing. I was surviving, and it hit me, and I realized like this does not make sense. I want to die, and it does not make sense. Like this is, and I know where this is going. I've been here before.
This is too familiar, I would think.
And and so I've had a therapist since I was in the hospital, and we would talk once a week. And so she called for our weekly call, and I was terrified to say anything because I thought that I was going to be, someone would call the cops and I'd be taken away to the hospital and like locked up basically in a psych ward.
Scary.
But I knew that if I didn't say something, I was going to die, and I was going to put my family through round 2 of what I had just done. And so I said something, and this was a huge turning point in my life because she was just there for me, and she told me we were going to get through it. And so we went from talking once a week to every day, and sometimes multiple times a day, because I was in that bad of a spot where like we would talk in the morning, and like by lunchtime I was like, Lord, I got some crazy, I need to talk to somebody. But we got through it, and it took months, but I started kind of crawling out of that pit, and that showed me like, okay, that's the only time I've ever actually, at that point, that was the only time I've ever been through something like that and actually dealt with it.
Wow.
And so I learned like this can get better, and this will pass if I do the work.
It's just so impressive to me where you are now.
So fast.
And I know for you it didn't probably feel fast, but so you got to talk to your therapist daily or even multiple times a day, and it sounds like that was really the catalyst of you being able to truly acknowledge what had happened and deal with it in your sobriety. Is that when you really decided what your future was going to look like, and that it was a future you wanted to be part of?
There was a tiny bit of that before things got way, way worse, and all through my own doing. So, I got into, or I got out of that spot probably, I believe that was like late spring, where I was back to a spot where I was back in a sane state of mind and wasn't having these crazy thoughts. And that summer, I finally approached my first math class. Up until that point, I had been doing all like text-based prereqs, and not even just prereqs. I did some advanced writing classes, but writing is pretty accessible. Yeah. So I had chosen that on purpose, and I had been putting off math, and I finally, it was time. Like I had to take my first statistics class, and it was over the summer semester. The school didn't make anything accessible and instead tried assigning someone to be my eyeballs.
Right.
That made me very frustrated because I had come so far and was fully independent. But if someone at the college didn't want to do their job, then I was now beholden to someone again.
Unfortunately.
Right. And so to keep all that short, basically the night that I took my first exam, I ordered some alcohol to blow off some steam, having not realized that I had been an alcoholic leading up to me shooting myself. I had that. I don't know how I didn't realize that, but I was killing it in all areas of my life except for the ones that I wasn't.
Right,
so like
right.
I was like, that's not me. So that unlocked something in me and basically reignited that addiction. And
Right.
that was ultimately that came out to be 2.5 years of rampant alcoholism. But this path at the same time. So after that first night, over a very short period there, like the addiction started, and I wound up self-admitting to the VA hospital one night and this was purely just because I was hammered and just in such a negative spot because of this college course. Like this was a BS. Like,
yeah.
I don't think I was actually probably suicidal that night. I was just that drunk, but I was worried that I was going to do something. Self-admitted to the VA hospital. I was in the psych ward for like 36 hours. And when I got out, there was a lot of other stuff going on at that time. Like the VA had been giving me the runaround for a long time to try and get my sleep taken care of, because I've had really bad issues with that since I've been blind. There was a lot of stuff.
Yes.
But
yeah.
basically, I came out of that and I was like, okay, what's causing all these accessibility issues? How come I can pay my mortgage but not do my math homework? How come I can take an Uber but not a Lyft? How come I can do X and not Y?
Yes, it's so frustrating.
I found out, because I've learned the screen reading software, and I'm like, I don't understand why this works in some contexts and not others. Mm-hmm. And so I knew JAWS and then VoiceOver on the iPhone at that point, and I found out that it all came down to the code running behind the scenes of each app and website.
That's right.
So I was like, all right, screw this. I'm going to stop whining about this. I'm going to be part of the solution. And so I dropped out of college and started teaching myself how to code.
Oh my gosh.
I was with the full intent, like, I am going to create accessible software that eliminates barriers for people with disabilities. But I'm also going to make things that look and function normally for people without disabilities. Yeah. And so I started doing that. And I mean, that was my full-time job. Mind you, I'm getting hammered on an increasing basis again.
I just don't know how you could have done both of those. Learning how to code and being intoxicated.
I would literally drink to the point where like I couldn't think straight enough to even think through like basic coding logic. So then I'd be like, okay, I'll go play guitar. And then I would get so drunk that I couldn't finger a chord on my guitar. It was it was bad. Right. And, I was wandering through Denver, totally blind and blackout drunk. And like, I'm lucky that I didn't die doing something stupid while I was
somebody
drunk.
else taking advantage of that situation.
Yeah. Along that whole path, I'm trying to get sober. I tried AA. I tried an outpatient rehab program to the VA, and also went to an inpatient rehab program. Mm-hmm. And right before I'd gone to that inpatient rehab program, again, that whole time, I'm still teaching myself how to code. Wow. And I'm literally teaching myself how to code through reading articles online and trying to code and just doing it. Again, I'm back in that mode where I've got a task and I'm going to make it happen.
That's your mission, right?
Yeah. We had found out that my mom has Huntington's disease right before I went to an inpatient rehab. So I got tested because I needed to know. It's a 50-50 shot if you inherit that. Right. And it is a nasty disease that basically it starts as a movement disorder and develops into speech and behavioral issues. And your brain tissue dies to the point where you basically become a vegetable before something else comes along and kills you, like pneumonia. And my grandfather had it. So I got tested, went to inpatient rehab. And while I was there near the tail end, got the call that I have Huntington's disease. Sad. And so I came home from that and I was like, I got another excuse to drink. So it got worse. And I got to the point where at its worst, I would just black out binge for 2 or 3 days straight, be hungover for 2 or 3 days, and then do it all over again. And like the time that I wasn't drinking in between was because I was so hungover. And so again, still teaching myself how to code this whole time because, I got to be productive. But the like cognitive dissonance there between what I was doing on both ends is insane. But so that fast forward all the way, I started teaching myself how to code in October 2021. On the 4th of July in 2023, my first app came out. It was called Zanagrams, and it was a fully accessible word puzzle game. Whether, if you had normal sight, if Moses played it, he would never know there was anything special about it. But if you were colorblind, legally blind, totally blind, and totally deaf, if you had no arms or were paralyzed from the neck down, you could play this game.
Wow.
Cool.
And I started getting feedback from it quick, and it was very well received in the disabled community specifically. And I'd done the entire thing myself. I'd taught myself how to do this, but I started hearing from people and like just hearing the impact it was having. And then it was like, I had found my purpose all of a sudden. I had lost my identity when I shot myself because I was a Marine. I was going to become this ER nurse, and then I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't do anything. And I found my thing again. And I had my identity. I'd come full circle, and I wasn't just independent, but I had put something back out into the world that was having an impact for people. And so I started making progress with my sobriety, and I made it a month sober, fell off the wagon for a little bit, made it 2.5 months sober, fell off the wagon. I if I remember correctly, for one night, and then I haven't had a drink since December 5th of 2023.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations. So tell us about the successes to run us out.
That game won 2 Game of the Year awards from accessibility focus sites. It was Apple Viz and then mobile accessible games at the end of 2023.
That is huge.
That happened. I realized like, okay, I am going to be sober, because for a while I thought that was going to kill me. So I started writing my book in the middle of January of 2024. That is now, I'm about to start the 3rd draft on that.
Yay.
I'm also working on another software project that is in the education space. And this will hopefully be something that turns into a true startup. And I will have more announcements hopefully on that in the near future, or at least before the end of the year here. But like I said, the book, started the podcast, Going In Blind with Zach Tidwell. I've, started to get some more speaking engagements. I got all these things going on, and that's kind of where we're at today. I'm about to compete in another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament here against people without any disabilities here in a couple of weeks. And
well, you wouldn't want to pick on somebody that couldn't see you.
No,
I'll beat up a blind dude. Yeah. I'll beat up a guy with no arms. No. But I was in another relationship for about a year, basically the entire time that I was sober, from like December through that ended in November. It was just didn't work out, but so I've been in some serious relationships. People, as wild as it may seem, with all of the other things that I've just announced that came along in the story, I've met some really incredible, accepting people, and it's been cool. So that's kind of where we're at today, and got 12 different irons on the fire that I'm hoping will kind of play out over this year.
So it sounds like you're the last 8 years or so have just been the usual humdrum story of a genius, like Picasso, Mark Twain, Einstein.
If you think back to when I said that statistics class about killed me, then I think we can remove the genius part from that.
No, it comes in different forms. It's more than IQ. So that's like me being an artist and studying a lot of the artists. It's people like Picasso, Monet, Dali, and a whole slew of others. The only thing that kept them out of mental institutions was they were famous artists, And
they could be eccentric because they were.
Oh, they were more
awesome
than they were evil people.
Yeah.
So, Zach, I want to make sure that people walk away today feeling empowered. I mean, I definitely am. But what would you like to share with people kind of some final words of advice, but also how they can reach out to you, learn more about you. I know you do a lot of public speaking. How can they find you and follow you? And
yeah, and I'll hit that question first. 2 prongs here. First, I always make a point to say, if you are that person who is struggling right now, you have to speak up. It can and will get better, but no one can help you if they don't know that you're struggling, and you won't get better if you aren't doing the work. And it's not going to be comfortable, and it's not going to be fast, but if you're already dealing with blindness, you've been through worse, you can get through it. All right. Like this is a temporary state, and you can get through it. And so tell someone, whether it doesn't have to be a professional, someone you trust. There's the suicide hotline at 988. I've called them before. They will help you.
Yeah.
There's resources out there. And then in terms of feeling empowered, you need to focus on the things that you still can do and not the things that you can't. That is a dangerous thing to focus on. And also that doesn't serve you at all. You can do a lot more there still than you realize. It's just a lot of it's going to look a lot different than how you used to do it if you had sight before. And in doing that, a lot of times that comes or plays out as you having to adapt your environment to you. So when I ski, I have a guide. When I whitewater kayak, I have a guide. When I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I'm the dummy in class. I can feel what the instructor is teaching while they're showing everyone else, or when I compete, it's a little different, and all these things, or the coding stuff, whatever it is. Like, if you focus on the things that you still can do, you will find joy in those things, even though they're not the same. And you will find a lot more joy in the things on the larger whole, because you're focusing on those smaller things. Easier said than done. I realize that.
Yeah.
But in terms of finding me, if you Google me, you will find me, but I'm primarily on Facebook, X. I do have an Instagram. I don't use it a whole lot. The picture thing is kind of rough.
Yeah.
I can't see them. But the podcast, again, is called Going In Blind with Zach Tidwell. That is everywhere. And then my website, zachtidwell.net. You can reach out there for speaking engagements, but I also have a mailing list there. And if you want to be kept up with news about the book, join the mailing list. It's not a spam list. I've had it for over a year and haven't sent out a single email yet. It's just for I've got a couple hundred people on there who want to know when the book is coming out.
Yeah.
And so if you want to join those ranks, I will keep you posted with all that stuff.
Well, Zach, thank you so much for being so open and raw with us today. But also helping to advocate with what you're doing with coding and jiu-jitsu. You were definitely an awesome ambassador for the blind and low vision community about what is possible. So
yeah, we don't have to make effing salt and pepper shakers.
That belongs on a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That's right. And everybody out there, thank you again for showing up week after week. You're the reason that this podcast is a success. And remember to be kind to yourselves this week and find a way to be kind to somebody else. It's good for your soul.